Okay, we're live. Well, everybody, welcome back to the Oily Underground. I don't know if you guys did notice or didn't. It's okay either way. We did take a little bit of a hiatus for this summer and just kind of let everybody chill and rest and relax and enjoy time with their family. So we hope you did that. But yeah, today is our first day back doing the Oily Underground. So we're going to just do kind of a quick run through of what to expect, what it looks like, and kind of the flow of things, just in case you forgot, but also just to cover our bases because we want to do that every time. First and foremost, we are not doctors prescribing medical advice to you. Anything that we share here is your responsibility to take, to weigh out, to research further, and to decide what's right for you and your family. So just know that everything we say is just suggestive, and the rest is up to you. We do good research on this. This isn't just pulling from the cuff stuff, but we're not your doctor, nor do we want to be. We want to safeguard ourselves and safeguard you guys. So there's that. Chat box is your best friend. It's fun to look through people's chats and catch up on maybe something that you missed. So feel free to throw comments down, throw down questions. We will try to kind of keep up with them. Myself, Brooke Ann, I'm leading the call tonight, but Sarah Jones and Sarah Loveland, we three co-host this. So they're going to be trolling the chat box while I'm talking, and just kind of keep up and answer questions. You're always welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question. If you need to, don't hesitate. This isn't super formal, so you can interrupt, but we just ask that you keep your sound off in between time. I think that's about it for covering the bases. Oh, one last thing. So the way that the Oily Underground works is it's kind of broke up into two segments. First segment is the science and the education about this is your body, this is how it works, and this is why it works. We try to break it down. All three of us have varying levels of health and wellness degrees in education. And we try and take really big complex things and simplify it and make it easier. So that's the first portion, is just the science of your body and why it does what it does. Second portion is what we will not record. That's when we're going to turn the recording off. And that's when we just share personal testimonies. We let people talk about what's worked for them. We open it up for maybe more personal questions that you didn't want to ask on a recorded line. And so that's when we'll go what we call proverbially into the underground. And so we'll kind of announce when we do that. So without further ado, let's rock and roll. I was supposed to have a lot of interesting statistics that I was going to pull today for this, but to be cryptic, I had a very unexpected day, so I wasn't able to get to it. But I think I don't really need to have a lot of statistics to offer this question to you to say, how many people in your life do you know that have asthma currently and have had it their whole lives, or have one or multiple children who have asthma? It's a huge number. It's increasing by leaps and bounds, and it's a very, very prevalent disease that a lot of people are just told, oh, it's childhood, they'll grow out of it, or, well, your parents had it, so you have a higher likelihood of having it. And this is just your life now. Like, here's some meds, here's maintenance medications, here's emergency medications, deal with it. And so what we want to do is we kind of want to help you understand how your body's working, but also help you understand that your body is not, this is not signed, sealed, delivered. There are options. There are ways for your body to heal. And I think if you know what you're working with, you are able to dive in and figure out how to support your body so that this isn't your lifelong good luck thing. So with that being said, let's just jump right into a little bit about how the respiratory system works. I tried to simplify it. There's some words that are maybe a little bit weird. So I'm just going to really quickly explain. First, if you hear the word bronch or bronchi before anything, just associate that word with the word lungs. It's referring to a portion of your lungs, but if you can just think, you hear the word bronch or bronchi and associate it with lungs, you're going to be doing great. And then the other one I'll explain when we get to it. So basically the rundown of the respiratory system works like this. You have lungs. Inside of those lungs, there are portions of it that are called the bronchi. And these are kind of like the first things that air is going to pass through once you've breathed it in through your mouth. These contain smooth muscle, which basically means it's a muscle that is working without you having to pay attention. It kind of involuntary goes. It's why you breathe while you sleep and you don't stop breathing, because this smooth muscle just continues to work even while you're sleeping. And it contains not only muscles that are contracting and doing what they're supposed to, but it also contains elastic fibers, which is what helps it return to its normal shape. It helps maintain the wall. So these bronchi should be able to expand with air and relax after they've got rid of the air without effort. So when you breathe in, you want them to be compliant with all the air coming in. You want them to fill. And when you breathe out, you want them to return to their normal state so they don't stay inflated. If I hold my breath and then I try to take in more, I can't. And that's what happens if your lungs aren't able to relax and go back to that. So now we're kind of moving further down into your lung system, and you have two, a right and a left lung. They have lobes. Who cares? It doesn't matter for this chat. All along the inner wall of your lungs, the inner walls of your lungs, you have little air sacs that are called alveoli. You don't need to remember that word. Just think of them as little gas exchange chambers, and that will help you, because these are the chambers where gas exchange is happening. So the alveoli are nestled all the way along the outer wall of your lungs, and that's where your capillaries, which are very teeny tiny blood cells. Here is the base of your lung. Here's the capillaries. They sit right on top of each other, and these capillaries that are carrying blood from your veins to your lungs to be reoxygenated, they meet right here, and they get the blood that, or sorry, they get the oxygen that the alveoli have breathed in, because your lungs fill up. Those little air sacs of alveoli fill up with the oxygen, which is a gas, and then they exchange that gas from themselves into the capillaries, and that goes into your blood, and it whips you back into the cycle where the oxygen goes in your blood, goes to all the organ systems, comes back up and tries to get more. In this gas exchange, you're also releasing carbon dioxide. So when your body goes through this, all the blood, you've used up the oxygen. I guess you want to say the waste product that comes out of it is carbon dioxide. You need to get that out. The way that happens is the same thing. It's a gas exchange, but instead of you breathing it in and putting it into the blood puts it into your lungs and you breathe that back out. And so that's kind of that whole cycle. It's a constant drop-off pickup line of gas exchange with every breath that you take. Something that's important to note for kids, or for the construction of like the shape and size of your lungs, is that children have smaller and shorter bronchioles, so those initial airway passages. So they do have a smaller amount of gas exchange that is taking place, which is theoretically why some doctors believe that you can grow out of it as you get older, because as you have more surface area to work with, you have more alveoli and more gas exchange sacs to work with. So theoretically, there's a belief that you can outgrow it as your lungs get bigger. So that's the basic rundown of kind of how the lungs work. Clear as mud, right? Right. So now we're going to talk about what's actually happening when your body is going into an asthmatic attack. It's a very complex and heady thing. If you just do a quick Google search of like what's happening, there are so many words that don't make sense. It's really quite a process to figure out what it is. So I've tried to break it down and simplify it into 2 phases and help you understand just what the basics of those phases are. Really quick, before we talk about the phases, you're going to hear me say the word IgE, antibodies. And I just want to define what those are. Antibodies are a protein that the body makes that helps you recognize and eliminate foreign invaders, because those antibodies get released into your bloodstream and they go and they activate cells and tell these cells you need to release certain chemicals. And the chemicals that are released are what cause an allergic reaction. So IgE antibodies, thank you, SJ, or Sarah Jones. Sorry, that's what I nickname her, but I don't know that everybody knows I call her that. Yeah, they're the cells that go on the defensive for you, the antibodies. So the basics of what starts is you're exposed to an allergen, and your immune system, when you have asthma is more sensitive to an allergen than other people's bodies is, which is why I can breathe in pet dander and I don't have an asthmatic reaction, because I am not overly sensitive to allergens being introduced into my body. So you're exposed to an allergen, your immune system is more sensitive than other people's, and your body sets off an immune system alert, which turns into this allergic reaction. And then it eventually, if not treated, can clamp down your respiratory system. So the two phases, the first phase of this slow, sometimes it's fast, but the overall process of clamping down, no matter how fast it is. Phase one, it's initiated by these IgE antibodies that are activated and released. These antibodies respond to certain triggers in the environment, such as, pet dander, fragrances, harsh chemicals, things of that nature. We'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute. Those IgE antibodies then bind to certain cells that produce an inflammatory reaction. They release a bunch of histamines, prostaglandins, and leukotrienes, things you can Google if you want to, but honestly, just think inflammatory cells or inflammatory chemicals that your body releases. All of those chemicals that are released produce this allergic reaction. In turn, those chemicals, cells that are released, those inflammatory things, make the smooth muscle start to contract, which means you have the tightening of your airway.
Make me a co-host quick so I can let people in.
Oh, I don't know how to do that real time. I just let her in.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll just pay better attention. I don't know why you're not a co-host. That's weird.
Me neither. Okay.
Cool. We're good. Sorry, guys. So your airway is slowly constricting and tightening because of that. So these cells are also those histamines that I was talking about. Those are also in this process releasing things like extra mucus, which complicates this problem. Not only is it constricting your airway, but now you're also producing more mucus. Those two things make it really difficult to breathe. So overall, to simplify phase one, it's very inflammatory. Phase one is an inflammation phase. And so then we move into phase two, which is where we really start to see this bronchoconstriction, where basically the presence of these chemicals, these cells, these inflammatory markers that are released further trigger more cells to show up. And these cells show up in a panic because of the inflammation, and they cause more constriction of the lungs, which means breathing is getting harder. You're wheezing now, you're coughing, you're gasping, because everything has now not only been like an inflammation response, but now you are severely constricting and clamping down. And kind of just a segue to that is, if this is left untreated for an extended amount of time, or it's a severe enough case, even with treatment for a long enough time, the body will actually start to, through a long series of events, it actually triggers your body to panic release more collagen cells, which sadly doesn't go to fighting wrinkles. It actually causes the airway to get thicker and thicker. The thicker your airway gets, the means it's harder. You ever tried to stretch a really fat rubber band? Those suckers don't really move. Why? Because they're so thick. It's the same concept of when your airway is getting thicker and thicker, you lose that elasticity and that mobility to go in and out easily and smoothly. In short, when you want to take a deep breath in and out and relax, the muscles are doing the opposite of what you want, because they just can't cope and stay processed that way. So that's the overview of what is your lung system and what is an asthma attack. Let's dig in a little bit more now into how it happens. We know that you are exposed to allergens and you get the Ig antibody release, and that's kind of the trigger of the cascade. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about some triggers that cause it, because sometimes if you can just know what to avoid, that's helpful. So we'll start there. And then we'll dig more into what else can you do now that you're avoiding the things that are triggering these asthmatic attacks. So the first and probably the biggest one is fragrances. And I feel like a lot of people, it's a hot button word. I think so many people throw it around. So I don't want you to tune me out right now. Unless you're very well versed in this, and then I don't know, go get coffee or something. But if this is a word that you've heard and don't fully understand, I want you to pay good attention, because fragrances are everywhere. Febreze, laundry detergents, hand soaps, they are in your dish detergent, like the stuff you clean your dishes with. It stays on your plates. It's in kids' bath soaps. It's in your makeups. It's in all kinds of things. And fragrance is a overarching word that it's an umbrella term that includes up to tens of thousands of different chemicals all in that one word, fragrance, because they use that many different things to create a fake smell, if that makes sense. And so fragrances are notoriously bad because, first of all, a lot of them are aromatic, which means even if you don't directly apply it to your skin, but it's releasing out of a candle, or it's on the counter because you cleaned it with heavily scented Lysol, those things are leaching up into the air. You're still breathing them in, and those turn into allergens. Fragrances in general, even for people who are not asthmatic, are still terrible because of the same thing. Anything is soaking in that you're breathing in is soaking into your bloodstream, and it does get stuck after too much exposure for too long. Something else that's interesting to consider is diet, and we'll dive a little bit more into this in just a second. Some other ones that are kind of obvious, and I don't really feel like we need to talk a lot about them, but pet dander. Some people are very allergic to like dust mites, so being in a dusty house, an older house, that's triggering for them. Certain things outdoors can be triggering for them. Those ones are a little bit harder because you can't control how much a dog sheds, you'd have to just get rid of your dog, but it's not like oh, I can just stop using fragrances and find a different product or get rid of fragrances or whatever. So I don't really feel like we need to dig as much into those ones as we did the fragrance one, because the fragrance one is one that's a little bit more modifiable. You can't really change the outdoors kind of thing. So we've talked a little bit about that. We'll jump into talking about diet, just because I think that's one that's not often considered. And a part of the person who's sharing a testimony tonight, I think she'll speak a little bit more about this because this was a big game changer for her. So there's obviously obvious things to do, with your doctor. You can work on taking meds, doing tests for all of the asthma stuff, but we really want you guys to be able to dig deeper than just treating the symptom of the problem of asthma. And yes, we believe that lungs are necessary or meds are necessary to keep your lungs compliant so that you're not having issues. And so it's great to take them. We are not trying to say like, stop taking your inhalers, keep them and start implementing these other things and kind of do a switcheroo where you balance yourself out of needing it as much or as frequently. So again, going back to kind of what I said, we're not doctors and medical advice. We also want to throw out that this is not 100%. So what worked for somebody might not work for you. And so you have to take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes it takes your body a little while for you and it to figure out what is your trigger, what's your deeper root, and what you can work with. So, so the first thing that you want to do is you want to actually, I guess, before we even really get into diet, I guess we should talk about like what you're trying to accomplish by changing lifestyle and diet. And so really what you're basically trying to target is you want to get your immune system to calm down. Remember way back at the beginning, I said, the reason that you have asthma and I don't is because your IgE antibodies are more triggered than mine are because they're more sensitive. They're hypersensitive. So the first thing we want to do is get those hypersensitive cells to calm down. We want to address not just the allergens, but also talk about the other things that are causing those cells to be oversensitive. And the reason that these things not only trigger an asthmatic episode, but eventually just cause long-term red flags in the immune system is because they're considered foreign invaders. Anytime there's a foreign invader in your immune system, your body goes on red alert, and it can do that for a while because that's the way that God made it. It's supposed to be that way. And it's able to tolerate that for a while. But if you're exposed long-term to a lot of these different things that are kind of toxic, foreign to your body, man-made chemicals, synthetics of any kind in food or fragrance, your body can only keep up with that for so long before it starts to get overburdened. Once it gets overburdened, what happens is it gets less adaptable at seeing what's truly something worth being a red flag and what's not something that's truly being a red flag. And that's where we get more of this hypersensitivity. Basically, it has accidentally been exposed to so many red flags so many times that it no longer can differentiate between what is a true red flag and what isn't. And that's when it elicits this IgE antibody response. And I just lost my place in my notes because, of course. So asthma is, I'm not trying to say they are exactly the same, but it sometimes it helps people understand this. It's actually comparable to an autoimmune reaction. So in an autoimmune disease, your body, your immune system starts to turn on itself and starts destroying its own cells. So this obviously isn't exactly the same, but they're comparable because in asthma, your immune system is overly sensitive to these allergens and mounts an excessive response to an invader that really shouldn't be. It's just pet dander. You should not be wheezing for pet dander, if that makes sense. I do want to just throw this out. I wasn't sure I wanted to say it or not, but I do want to throw out a caveat about being on steroids, because I know that's part of sometimes the protocols and the bundles that people are on, especially if they have really chronic long-term asthma. The caveat about being on steroids is part of the reason that physicians prescribe steroids, and the reason that they work is steroids basically force your body to have, force your immune system to go to sleep. It forces your immune system to just take a chill pill. The problem is it didn't solve the reason that your immune system was needing a chill pill. Your immune system never got to reset and rebalance itself. It just forced it into sleep. And so as soon as you stop taking a steroid, what happens is you slowly lose that sleep. Your immune system wakes back up. And as soon as it wakes back up, it's going to function back at exactly where it was at. So steroids work, yes, but they don't solve a long-term problem, because we've said it a lot of times. It's an oversensitivity. So it's not a great long-term solution. Sorry. So we'll go back to things to do. Sorry, I'm switching my notes around a little bit. Again, my brain's kind of on a scramble from having quite a long day, but we'll talk about things you can do in your home first, then we'll talk about diet. I promise we're going to get to diet. This isn't a wild goose chase. So we kind of touched on it a little bit with like the idea of fragrances being in our house and how those can be, they're aromatic, so you're breathing them in. So a great first place to start, especially because it can seem overwhelming and seem like there's a lot, like what should I do? Just clean your environment. Again, harsh chemicals, long-term exposure to harsh chemicals of any kind in your environment, they build up, the body gets overwhelmed with red flags, and it treats all things like it's a red flag, even if it shouldn't. So biggest offenders, cleaning supplies, because you are constantly touching surfaces that have been cleaned. Personal care products, so bath soaps and like personal perfumes and fragrances, get rid of them. They sit on your skin and soak in literally all day long. All day long, you are telling your immune system, freak out, freak out, freak out, freak out, freak out. And it doesn't have a break. It doesn't get to take a break. Detergent, so laundry detergent. This one seems like maybe it's not a big deal because you just wash your clothes with it. But have you seen those commercials where it's like the guy broke up with his girlfriend and he smells the scarf and it says like 6 months later and he's like, it still smells like her. It's because those fragrances are still attached to the clothing. And if they stick on clothing that long, what are they doing on your skin for that long? Fragrances, candles, we kind of already talked about those. The air wax things, the Glade plugins, that's kind of the thing I'm talking about when I'm saying fragrances and scents. Those are long ways. Something else to kind of consider, and I don't say this to stir the pot or anything, but just kind of considering what kind of medications and stuff we're giving our children in excess. A lot of like antibiotic use. I know that it's really common to take antibiotics for ear infections or for strep throat, because we hear of the really crazy one-off cases where somebody died from it. I know somebody who died of a sinus infection. There's just crazy cases where that happen. But if you are suppressing the immune system so much like that, it doesn't get a chance to learn how to appropriately handle certain foreign invaders like bacteria and stuff. And so if you are overexposed to antibiotics when you're young, it can kind of thwart your immune system's ability to learn how to properly handle those foreign invaders, dust mites, allergens outside, and then when it does get introduced to them, it hasn't learned how to adapt, and so it freaks out and goes into an overmounted, oversensitive response, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that there are not times and places. I worked in a critical care unit. I am believer fully in the power of antibiotics, and there are times that we need them, but my son and I both, we've never needed antibiotics for ear infections or strep throat, and there are other options out there like homeopathics and stuff too, if that helps you. So that's that. Let's get into diet now, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to beef up your body to start fighting now that you've eliminated some environmental things. So diet, I know it seems weird to be talking about diet, but there's a couple reasons that it is very applicable. One, food these days just is some of the worst quality ever. It's loaded with preservatives, it's loaded with fillers, it's loaded with artificial dyes. Those things are foreign invaders in your body, even if you feel like you tolerate them just fine. I tolerated dairy for years and I thought I was fine, but what was happening was every time I was eating dairy, I was telling my body, red alert, red alert, red alert. And I was overexposing my body for so long that eventually it was on a red alert all the time about a lot of different things. And once I calmed it down, now dairy doesn't bother me anymore. Plus I'm drinking raw dairy, which is just a better version of dairy for you anyways, but that's a different conversation. So that's why food is a huge thing, because we have to eat food all the time. And if we're accidentally ingesting even just moderate amounts of these preservatives, chemicals, fillers, etc., again, overexposure causes a hypersensitive immune system. Dairy and gluten are some of the biggest offenders. I don't really have time to get into those, but you can Google why dairy and gluten is so inflammatory to your body. Dairy is especially inflammatory for people who are asthmatic, because dairy really affects your mucosal lining, which is like your mouth. That whole area is mucosal membrane. It's just like kind of the name of the skin that's covering that area. Your throat is mucosal membrane. A weird way that you can know, and it's crazy, but we found out my son was sensitive to dairy even after he stopped showing symptoms of it, because his earwax is like a really rusty orange color. And it's because these are part of kind of this whole mucosal situation. And so when we cut out dairy, his earwax changes colors. Super weird. Thought I'd throw that out there though. The other thing that is about important to know about diet is that poor food quality also means that the cells you are getting or the cells you have are getting depleted of nutrients, because you're not eating nutrient-rich food and nutrient-dense food. And so if your cells do not have nutrients, even if you are eliminating fragrances left and right and getting rid of allergens left and right, you're chemical free, if you do not replenish and restore your body, your cells still aren't going to be able to heal themselves, because they don't have the nutrients, the tools they need to run efficiently and run well, especially when they are in this red alert panic mode. You kind of have to double down and overdo it to re-nourish, because they're in such a depleted state from being in red alert for so long. They've just totally drained their stores. We'll quick talk about a few ways to beef up your body, and then I'm going to turn it over and we'll go underground. So we're almost to the underground bit. So beefing up the body, I chose to just tackle a couple of things to not overwhelm you guys and at least just kind of help you get you started. A really big one that's interesting is there's a really amazing molecule. It's the only molecule I can say I actually love, because it does so many amazing things for your body. And it's actually called glutathione. The really quick brief snapshot, you can Google it later, is glutathione basically goes in and helps your body strip out toxins that have gotten stuck in your body and your body's not able to get rid of them anymore. Glutathione specifically targets those toxins that are built up and lurking, and helps you get rid of them. So it's going to help bring down inflammation inside of your body. Glutathione was created with, you need to have a appropriate amount of methyl sulfoner or something. It's MSM. Your body needs enough MSM to make this glutathione. We should be getting this MSM in like sulfur-rich foods, but we just don't, because we just don't get enough of the kind of foods that have that quality. And we are depleted of it because of the poor food we're eating, because we're not getting enough, because every time we're exposed to harsh chemicals and toxic chemicals, that depletes us. And even very interestingly, Tylenol, the use of Tylenol severely impairs your body's ability to create and maintain glutathione stores. So children, we're told you can take Tylenol from a pretty young age. Every time you are giving it to them, you're lowering their body's ability to create this glutathione molecule, which is supposed to be helping them get rid of all of these toxins. Also, your liver is what is supposed to get rid of the bacterial and viral debris, so the residue of dead cells. And it's not able to do that nearly as fast either. So when you're giving Tylenol when kiddos are sick and stuff, it stresses your liver because of the way your body processes it. It stresses your body because your liver can't get out the things that need to get out, like those bacterial cells that needed to be flushed out, or the toxins that have been lurking and now just have no pathway to go out, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the little bit about that. Without talking in depth about, like I said, this wonder molecule, glutathione is just really important in this discussion because about asthma specifically, because they've found that it can actually help prevent the hyperreactivity that is seen in asthma cases. Simplified version, it can help prevent your body from having a super freak out and staying in red flag alert. And help your body calm that overactive immune system down. So some ways to boost it: magnesium sulfate, sulfate. There's a lot of different magnesiums. So magnesium sulfate is a form of sulfur that your body needs to get to the liver to help detox out the junk, to help beef up the glutathione. You need, like I said, enough of that sulfur, that specific type of sulfur, to be able to make glutathione. So magnesium sulfate's a great one. N-acetylcysteine, NAC, that one has been in the news a lot lately. So even if you don't know much about it, you've probably seen the name. That is another medication that is able to help your body beef up and restore these glutathione levels. And then the last one is one called sulfurzyme. That's one that's through Young Living. It has a extra awesome dose of that MSM that you need to create glutathione. That is, again, a certain type of, it's the super long name for the specific type of sulfur. I don't know, I'm not that smart of a person. So sulfurzyme has a big boost of that. It also has a lot of the other things that your body needs to help your cells re-nourish as well. And so it works really, really well with some things. Works really, really well with some other things that help your body do that as well. And orange oil is one of them that I was going to say. Orange oil is also great for helping your body regulate that glutathione. And pairing it with something like Ningxia Red or Master Formula, which are very, very nutrient rich, nutrient dense. You can kind of think of them like little bombs of nutrients. If you can combine your sulfurzyme with those, what happens is you beef up your glutathione, but you also beef up your cells so that your cells are able to reabsorb, re-nourish, reboost up those nutrient stores so that they're not so depleted. And when they aren't so depleted, they are in a healthier state to be able to work with your immune system and say, chill out, let's get this figured out, and go from there. So that is as short as I can make it. I know that was just about 30 minutes and probably felt super long. So if anybody has any questions that are related to just the science of it, not the how-tos and testimonial sides of it, because we'll do that in a second. But if you have any questions about the science of it, and you want to just quick jump in, I'll give you about 10 seconds to do so. And if I don't hear from you, we're going to go underground. Okay. All right, I am going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we are going to hear from Miss Sarah Jones.